Part 2 of my conversation with my mom, Cindi Melchor, is brought to you by Fort Meigs CrossFit and FortMeigsCrossFit.com. Check out their website for any information you want to know about what services they have to offer. Thanks as always to them for allowing me to use their space. Part 2, guys. This is a continuation of the conversation I had with my mom. Again, we get into her alcoholism, my brother and his addictions, my dad having to deal with everything. But this one's a little more heavy, but it's not. I mean, nothing you've probably never heard before, especially on here. So, thanks for downloading. Thanks for listening. And here is the rest of my conversation with my mom. Where at that point, then, obviously at some point you were like, all right, well, I'm not going to drink.
I couldn't, yeah.
Because I'm pregnant.
Right.
But where did that pick up again then? Because you obviously, you discussed being an alcoholic before, but where did that
start again?
Yeah.
It was actually towards the end of nursing school, and I'd already had her.
Did that play into your decision to not nurse too, or you didn't even think about that part?
No, I didn't. Mm-mm. Because I wasn't drinking, and it was easy not to. My brain hadn't become alcoholic yet, I guess.
Okay.
That switch hadn't turned on yet.
Yeah.
And so I remember. So I'm studying really hard, and I'm tired, but I'm getting at your dad's, and I'm gonna fail. I'm gonna fail nursing school, and I'm like, I can't.
Yeah.
And my instructor said, Cindi, I don't know what's going on. You answer all the questions. I mean, because I was already I was an LPN, so I was in that fast track LPN to RN program, and so she said I would answer all the questions when she would tell me, but I would bomb the test.
Yeah.
I started to have really bad test anxiety. And it was those, and it was multiple choice, so they all sounded the same. And then every time somebody would get up and they would be done, I'm like, I'm only on question 20, and they're already done, and I'd get all nervous, and I was gonna fail. So I tried a trick that somebody told me. They said, cover all the answers, and when you have the answer in your head, then it'll show up, in those. So that worked for a little bit. And then, so then one day she says, you're just really nervous.
Yeah.
Maybe you should take something to take the edge off. Drink some wine, And I'm like, I wanted to try anything, right?
Yeah.
So so we didn't have wine in the house, but we had beer, So I drank a beer on the way to school the next morning. Because she said, she goes, you have to get 90 or above. Otherwise, you're going to fail this course.
Yeah.
I'm like, I was never an A student. School was always hard. So I took it, here I'm drinking on the way to work, and what do I do for a living? The DIP program, I'm drinking on the way to school. I got a 98% on that test.
Yeah.
So I'm like, ooh, if that can happen.
This is the way to go.
Yeah. Liquid gold.
Yeah.
So it just all of a sudden something switched, and I could study better. I could do the housework better. I was a better, baseball mom.
Yeah.
And so I talk about, my drinking career was 10, was 10 years, from 32 to 42.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So 30, okay. So when you had Martina, where were you at in this?
So when I had Martina,
she was 8 years younger than me.
So I was drinking. Once again, she was a surprise. And
I don't know. You told us different stories before.
What was that?
You would always tell us that you planned to have her.
Oh, I kind of wanted to, yeah.
Yeah.
So I kind of wasn't drinking because I kind of wanted to, yes. And then I did. Because I guess what you can say is, because I did have, I had a miscarriage.
Okay.
Yeah. So that one was not planned. So the miscarriage was not planned. So when I was pregnant and I got a miscarriage, I already had it in my mind that I wanted to have a baby.
Okay.
So that's why then she became planned.
Yeah.
Because I didn't take anything anymore.
Yeah.
And I mean, your dad didn't want to, but I did. I didn't take anything anymore because he goes, well, we already planned on having this baby, so why not, right? So, and maybe the miscarriage was because I was drinking so much.
Yeah.
You know. So yeah. So then I didn't, and it was it was real easy for me not to. You know, when I was pregnant with her, and and I nursed her and everything. So then as soon as I decided I was gonna stop nursing,
You just started drinking again?
right?
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you can go however, I mean, at least 9 months and then some
Right.
more, maybe another year or something. I don't know. But
And I don't know if it's the mom in me that stopped it, and then afterwards it doesn't work anymore, because I need it. And by that time, by the time I got done drinking, when I was, I was drinking 2/5 a day
Really?
plus beer.
wow.
That's
That's a lot.
Yeah.
And then to be able to
Function.
because as a kid, I didn't even notice anything.
Yeah.
And maybe it's for me because I was a kid and you were drinking. You started drinking when I was little, so it's just like, oh, this is
how I am.
So you don't pay attention to it.
Right.
Obviously, the only time I would pay attention to it is when you got in trouble and you weren't around, or when you got a DUI or went away. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was I should have had many DUIs, and I tell everybody. I mean, usually I go like, you're here, and you got caught, but how many times did you drive?
Yeah.
Before you got caught, and I should have had many, but I only got one.
Well, that and was there times where someone was like, "Hey, just have someone come pick you up"? Did you ever have that happen to you, where you did get pulled over, or someone just said,
No, I mean, because I would get pulled. And my reaction time, of course, is slower because I'm drinking.
Yeah.
And I would tap people in the back, and they would always like, "Oh, it's okay, we don't have to call anybody."
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I'd come home and I'd tell your dad. And one thing he goes, "You know what? You stopped hitting people in the back when you stopped drinking." And I'm like, imagine that. But yeah, so they just didn't think that, no, I'm not drunk. And so, yeah. And
do you have anything? I know people don't like, well, my drinking, I blame my drinking on this or whatever, because that's your thing. You take ownership of that. But is there things that in your mind you're like, this played into me drinking, or is it just something you started and just never?
Well, at first I used to, and I think it was more of an excuse for it, because if you would have heard my first lead when I talked about my story, I blamed my parents on a lot of it because of my childhood. But then it's like I had to forgive them in order to heal. They did the best they could. I remember my dad said he got beat all the time. He was fine. And I'm like, are you fine? Yeah. Really?
Look at us. Yeah.
So, but, and I used to do that and say that, woe is me type of thing. But, at the end of the day, I'm the one, it happened. And and it is a disease because, it is a disease because my brain thinks differently.
Yeah.
So, but it's not something that I can cut out like cancer, and it's always going to be there. But there are tools that I can do to help fix it, right?
Yeah.
So, and there's, because there's a difference with the addict. And I say I'm an addict because my drug of choice is alcohol, you know. So that's what I'm addicted to. So, but and it kind of came back, and I was seeing this therapist, and I remembered because when I, got remarried with your dad, and Dad and Martina are going to live with me, and I started seeing all these alcohol commercials, like I would notice the glass and the liquor and the ice cubes and and I'm like, were all these commercials always here?
Yeah.
Because I never noticed them before. Because when I was living with Stacy, we didn't talk about drinking or anything, right? And the therapist said it's because there are 2 people in your house now that drink, and your brain knows that. Mm-hmm. And she goes, so that's why the alcohol is in the basement.
Yeah.
So, because she said if it would be in the fridge, every time you open it, you'd see it. And one day you're going to pick it up. Yeah. And you're not even going to be aware of it. So, do I want to drink now? Every now and then I think about it. At some point in every single day, there's a time when I'm like, oh, that looks good. Oh, I wish I could do that. But it comes and goes that quick, but every day.
Really?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember when you first got sober, and it was one of those things like, well, can I have this around you, or can I do this?
Mm-hmm.
I always felt bad.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I shouldn't. Not that I shouldn't be drinking, but I shouldn't be
in
around
front of
you
me. Yeah.
with it,
Yeah. And that's the thing too. I mean, it's not illegal. It's everywhere,
Yeah, yeah.
so, but yeah. And your dad will ask me, is it okay if I have a beer, before dinner? And I think I've only told him no once, because I was feeling a little bit jiggity.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I don't.
Yeah.
But like your brain plays tricks on you all the time. I remember because when we moved to Perrysburg, none of the places here, I never drank in Perrysburg. Yeah. So I remember, and when I used to drink, we'd always go to Amigos,
Yep.
and my thing there, a margarita, no ice, no salt for me and salt for your dad, right? And one time we went to El Vaquero to eat, and they sat us down, and we both went to the bathroom. And then when we came back and sat down, there were 2 drinks, one salted, one unsalted.
Oh, really?
And sitting at the table. And I was probably, 3 years sober maybe or something. And I looked at it and I told Dad, I go, it's a God thing. I'm supposed to drink it. And he goes, I'm just kidding. But sometimes I think, what if I would have been by myself? Or with somebody else who didn't really know I was an alcoholic?
Yeah.
Would I have drank it?
Yeah.
Hopefully I wouldn't, because it's very important to me because I know I'll go right back to 2 fists in a minute,
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
Where do those drinks come from?
So she said, "Oh, I thought that's what you ordered." I'm like, "We didn't order these, So your dad drank them both.
just helping you out.
Yeah. But yeah,
Oh,
so
yeah, I remember as a kid. We've talked about this before, but I remember as a kid, like when you guys used to party quite a bit. I remember, and then as I got older, I'm like, oh, that's why I went to Grandma and Grandpa's so often. They probably were partying a lot,
Yeah.
And as we got older, sometimes we'd be there. I tell the story about when Miller Lite had the football teams underneath the caps of the glass bottles. Like I was just opening them and handing them to everybody because I wanted to collect all these caps. you know? And as a kid, you're just like, well, this is just what parents do. They just party and have fun. And even now, like I don't remember specific times where I went somewhere. I was like, oh, they don't do this or whatever, because it's not like kids are around when parents are having parties at other parents.
Other parents, right? Exactly, because they're not. And I talk about that too. I say, I go, that is not normal, for your boys to be the bartenders.
It's just what we did, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it's just what we're used to. I don't remember ever because I know Dad's thing was always to take care of you. When you first started drinking, like where was Dad at? Like where was he at, like mentally at this point? Because there isn't a time where like you start drinking and he immediately has to take care of you. There may be times where you drink too much and he had to like help you in the car.
Right.
Or whatever, right.
But we were drinking buddies.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he probably drank as much as I did, but when it was time to stop, he stopped.
Yeah.
So and that was one thing too. Like he lost his drinking buddy. So yeah, it wasn't until I started getting in trouble, and getting in trouble with blackouts. Because I always tell everybody, but the judges don't care if you don't remember,
Yeah.
So, and that's when it turned and he started, then we make our family sick, then all his apples were in my basket and he was busy, he didn't want anybody to know what I was doing.
Yeah.
So he was, that was his job.
Yeah.
So, and I think I was able, he saw what I grew up with. So to him, it made sense that I drank because of my upbringing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
gave him like a reason for you.
Yeah. So that wasn't like, a bad person or something. I had a reason for it. Yeah.
Were there, because I know one time I remember you going to prison. Were there other times where you like would get in trouble for little things, or was that like the main?
That was the main thing. Yeah, that was the main thing. I would get in trouble, but I might have spent a day in jail one time.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the main thing. And then we always had a nice attorney.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when I needed him for something I got in trouble with, and we went to the court in Toledo. And he's like, all right, come with me. And we walk in the courtroom, and there's something going on, like an actual like case. Who knows, some little thing maybe. And as people are talking, he walks right up to the judge and talks to him, whatever, hands him paper. And then the judge tells the people who are currently in court, is like, all right, well, we got to take care of this. You guys take a break for a minute.
Yeah.
I was like, what is happening here? But he just like walked right up there.
Right? That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a good feeling.
Yeah.
You do pay for it.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, I remember Kendra. Remember Kendra?
Yeah.
She said, well, she goes, what is Jerry going to do? How is Jerry going to pay for his house since you don't get in trouble anymore?
Yeah. It was quite a sight to see.
Yeah. But he was also, he was concerned. I have his cell phone number. You know, he was concerned for me, you know, and stuff. And I remember one time I was sitting in the court. I went with the sponsee, and he walked in. I go, it's not me. He goes, okay.
Jeez.
But yeah, so
as you're obviously you're drinking and you have little kids. Do you ever notice like when Buddy starts getting involved in all this stuff?
I didn't notice when he was little. Apparently he started like at 13, you know. I mean, he started pretty young, and I just knew he was always getting in trouble, and I didn't really notice him being on drugs.
Yeah.
Probably because I was drunk.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. So yeah.
I remember he was, gosh, it must have been close to us moving to Perrysburg, because I think I was in junior high, and I remember he'd always take your car, and he's like, Lorenzo, I'm gonna drive by every once in a while. If mom and dad wake up, just turn the front light on or porch light on. Yeah. So he would I would notice him drive by because I was so nervous, like I couldn't do anything.
Oh, gosh.
So my whole purpose was to listen to see if you guys got up, and then to turn the light on, so he knew to bring the car back. And I remember one time I was out in the garage, and Dad came out, and the car was gone, and I had an umbrella, and I opened the umbrella so he couldn't see like in the driveway, and it worked. Like he did not see the car.
Oh my God, Lorenzo, you're such a good brother.
So I had this umbrella, I opened it, and I was just talking to Dad or whatever, and then he went back in the house, and I flipped that light on. But every time he would ask me to do that, I was so nervous because I didn't know what was going to happen. I thought I would get in trouble, so I was nervous. I didn't want to get in trouble.
Right.
Yeah, it was, and then like, I mean, you guys were never like super mean to us, like, so there was no reason for us to like get so scared. Where like, yes, you were going to get mad,
right?
But and even for Buddy, because I remember the one time Buddy took the car and then ran from the police, and then flipped the car 3 times, hit a tree, and he was fine. And he told the police officer, like, just take me to jail. I don't want to go home.
Yeah.
You know, but even then, like, it's not like anybody was going to get hit or anything.
Right.
You know, that never happened. So like, I just remember those times, like he'd always involve me just enough where I guess he could involve me a tiny amount, and I still would have felt like I was in trouble.
Right. And I think it was the fear of, because we didn't beat you or anything, but you just didn't want to disappoint us.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. And that particular time. Your dad said, call your mom. He's not coming home.
Oh, really?
And that's when, and mom met us at the hospital. And she took him that night. And then he said, no, that wasn't the night we kicked him out. Because I don't know if that came before because like I said, I was drinking. So I was working in Waterville. And I remember I came out of work because I went to work in, you know, I worked 6 a to 6 p most of the time. So it was winter time, so it was dark both times.
Yeah.
So I go to work, and then I came out, and I was at a carry out in Waterville. I always bought a 6-pack, and I drank it on my way home.
Yeah.
And so I buy it, and when I come out, I notice that my front light is broken. So. And I noticed when I was, you know, how if that light is not working, your turn signal flicks a lot faster. Yeah. And I had noticed that on my way to work, but I didn't think anything of it. And so then I come out, and then I tell the attendant, I'm like, somebody hit my car, you know. So we both go out there, the police come, and then police are saying, there's no glass here. You know, I go, well, then it happened at work. So they follow me to work, and there's no glass where I parked. And they're like looking at me like I'm stupid. It's like, I go, okay, well, so I get home, I tell your dad about it, and then he asks Buddy. And, Buddy did it.
Yeah.
And Buddy says no. And then he goes, well, one of you two did it.
Yeah, yeah.
And whoever did it is out of here.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So he was not in a good mood that night. And I said, okay, well, I guess I did it. I'll leave.
Yeah.
And then Buddy said, no, I did it.
Yeah, yeah.
And so Dad he said, get out.
Yeah.
And he started walking down the road.
Yeah.
And he called Grandma. He found a phone somewhere, and he called Grandma. And Grandma picked him up, and she set him up in an apartment with designer sheets. And he started selling drugs out of that apartment.
Oh my gosh.
And I told Mom, that's the only time I got so angry with her.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, Mom, this is our son. You can't enable him.
Yeah.
She was a big enabler for me, and I said, you can't enable him. We kicked him out hoping that he's going to have it bad out here, and he's going to want to come back and obey us. But he's not if you take care of him.
Or at the very least, like, pick him up to just take him to your house.
Yeah. Yeah, no. He had a little apartment over there by the medical college.
Yeah.
He showed me one time, he goes, yeah, that's where I was living. And I guess he just got tired.
Yeah.
He got tired of having to do that, to continue to sell drugs to make money to eat, know.
Yeah.
And then one time him and Andy came over to the house, and he apologized. And then later on, he's like, both of them were higher than a kite, and I didn't realize
When they apologized?
Yeah. He told me that they had both been smoking all day. Yeah. He goes, I think that's why I came back, because I was tired and I wanted to go home, Yeah. And he just left the apartment, left everything there. I mean, he didn't pay for it, right?
He doesn't care. Yeah.
Oh gosh, yeah. But Mom would always get mad at me when I'd, get mad at him or wouldn't let him stay.
Well, he was her favorite.
Yeah. I always tell him that. I was like, yeah. Everybody knew it. Nobody really cared, that he was her favorite. He would always make her laugh. They'd watch those thriller movies. Oh my
God.
God.
Real bloody movies. Yeah.
And they'd be laughing. He'd be scaring her, and she loved it,
Yeah. I can't imagine how Dad was, because of both of you being addicts at the same time, like doing all this stuff.
Right.
I mean, I was just a brother and a son, just seeing this from not getting hardly any details, because I didn't need any details. There's just time. I remember one time Buddy came home, he got beat up. And he was all bloody, and I was by myself, or it might have been me and maybe Misty or something. But he just walks in and he's all bloody, and I'm like, do I gotta call the police? What's going on? He's like, nope, I'm fine. And then he just went to sleep or something, But just having to deal with all that, or understanding some of his friends and who he hung out with as I got older, oh man, this isn't right. And he, to his credit, he never said, hey, Lorna, you should do this, or you should do, try this or that or whatever. There was only one time, and I might even ask him, but there was only one time I remember where I got high with him. I smoked in Dad's truck. But that's the only time that when I was younger that happened. But he never tried to peer pressure me into doing any of that stuff. And I think I don't know if that was just because I was his younger brother and he didn't want me to do any of that stuff, and he saw where things were headed for him, and or what. But I always think about that.
Yeah.
Because it's most people would do that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I remember because he was 18, so he wasn't a juvenile anymore. And when he was at a party, and some guy jumped on his car, and he was swerving, so that meant he used his car as a weapon. And they charged him with felonious assault. And so we went, and Jerry, he said he could bring it down to misdemeanor, so he wouldn't have a felony, but he had to do 9 months there in Bowling Green at the jail there. And so we said, yeah, do that.
Yeah.
He was so mad at us. He turned around and he was growling, and he was so angry because we did that. We made that deal.
Yeah.
But then afterwards I said, because he wouldn't have been able to be a nursing assistant with a felony, because your dad knew from me, it's if, they follow you forever, you can't, So yeah, but one time he did say, he goes, I was really mad at you, but yeah, you made a right call. I'm like, yeah. So, but that was really, I mean, he ran around with the really bad people.
He never got in trouble enough
No.
to be like, to say, obviously there was a problem, but he never got himself in trouble where like he would get locked up or do or any of that
Right.
stuff.
No, that was
I mean,
the only time.
I think you were away longer than he ever
Yeah.
was.
Yeah. And that was the only time, that he did that. But then it wouldn't have happened, if we wouldn't have done it. So
Yeah.
But yeah, he never. That was my fear, that he was going to be somewhere and he was going to die, and I wouldn't know where he was.
Yeah.
So because he always contacted me somehow, every other day at least, if not every day, something. So I mean, I was grateful that he was in town when it happened.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would just mention it, like you are prepared because of what his lifestyle, and so you get prepared. But I mean, no one's ever fully prepared for that kind of stuff. And I remember you calling. It was probably like 3 a.m. or something when you called, and I didn't realize you guys were downstairs at the house, and for a little bit because I just woke up. So then Andrea called her mom. She's like, it's like, hey, can you come over and watch the kids? Be here with the kids. And then I found out like you guys were downstairs, and but yeah, it sucked. But part of it is you're just like waiting for it to happen, and then you feel like not like good about it, obviously, but it's just like you can like rest or whatever.
Yes.
I think you even said that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember. When when his friend called, he said they're working on him. And I woke Dad up. And then Martina and Haley were there, right? So we all go over there, and sometimes I think about, because they didn't let me see him. There's probably a reason. He probably didn't look very good.
Yeah.
And I would have to remember that.
Yeah.
So that's probably, I always think about that, because they're like, no, you don't want to go up there.
Yeah.
And so, because I saw, what's his name? His friend Josh. I saw Josh talking to the police, and then I said, nobody's bringing Buddy out. What's going on? Are they working on him? What's going on? And I was just like, and then one of the paramedics comes out, and Haley and Martina went over there, and their heads are down, and I'm like, so then we were there for a while. I felt like my legs went from underneath me, like I was going to fall. I think Martina caught me. And then, it was it. I called my sponsor. Told her about it, before we even left there when we got in the car, and then that's when we drove over to your house.
Yeah.
And I don't remember when we called Misty. Sometime during the night. Yeah.
I always talk about Buddy whenever we talk about drugs and alcohol and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And we were, my supervisor took me and the other supervisor out for lunch, and we were kind of getting to know him. He's a new supervisor, but he's been with the Metro Parks for a while, but he's new, and so we were all talking about our families and stuff. And so I told him about my brother and told him about Buddy, and then like when we were walking out, I was like, hey Zach, I was like, do you want to compare older brothers? And then he was like, oh come on man. I go, I'll start. Is yours alive? And he's like, come on.
Okay, I win.
And my boss was shaking his head and laughing. But I told him, I was like, it's weird, like how you never know how you're gonna cope with that kind of stuff. And then and then I told him how I was like, I walked in around Halloween, and both my brother and my grandma had costumes on their urns. I'm like, Mom, what's happening here?
I tell everybody about that. I said, and Buddy probably hates it, but Mama likes it.
Yeah. It's bad.
Oh yeah, you cope with it how you do, right?
Yeah.
Or like, he always used to give anybody my phone number for like reference, and then he called. He go, Mom, say you're Cindy Gonzalez, and I don't tell him yes, But they never called me, you know,
Yeah.
and I wasn't going to lie when they did call. But I always thought to myself, I'm going to have to tell them not to hire him because he will do drugs.
He's going to make me look bad as a reference.
Yeah. So they never called me, but, you know, say you're Cindi Gonzalez. Okay, buddy. And, or like when he'd get a loan or something, my phone number, right? So he's, you know, owing money and they caught the one time, and they haven't called since because they caught me at a bad day, and I answered the phone, and then they're asking for, you know, Cindi Melchor. I said, he's dead. Oh, sorry, ma'am. Okay, we'll take him out of our system. All right. I'm like, oh, but he got a kick out of that one.
Jeez.
So, yeah.
Yeah, he was obviously he was a really good brother, and you know his only downfall was that, but he still made a point, you know, to, like you said, to call you or to be in contact, and you know, there was a few times we were upset because he missed holidays or whatever, you know, because he was off doing drugs, but he was always around when you needed him to be around, and to help with whatever. He might not always be there 100%, you know,
Right.
in his mind there.
Right.
But you know, that's what was tough for me, is like, I was like, man, you can do all these things and be okay for like 6 months, and then like, why can't you just be that way for longer? Like,
Right.
why do you have to go back to that? You know,
Right.
you get all these opportunities, and there was no one that had more opportunities ever than Buddy.
Right.
Like and most of it was because of him. Like, he's a hard worker, and he's a smooth talker.
Yes.
And he can, you know, talk his way out of anything or into stuff. And
Right.
you know, I was like, man, just harness that for
Right.
something.
I mean, he got a job at Ohio State.
Yeah,
Come on.
and then right away they're always like, "Oh yeah, we want you to. You're good. We want you to do this and put you through school for this and that and this. You know, all this stuff." And I was like, "Man, like how?"
He's there and then he went. So I sent him money to get some clothes, you know, and stuff. And then like 3 days later, I walked out. Like, I told you not to take it. That they were going to want a budget, and you're a supervisor. You got to know these things.
Yeah.
And he's like, Mom, I go, what happened? He goes, they just kept coming at me. I just got in my car and left.
Could you imagine being a worker and see your supervisor just be like, "I'm off. See you. Bye." Oh my god!
And I remember telling him, and don't put it on Facebook, whatever you do. Sure enough, guess where I'm working? 3 days later, he's walking off.
But he's like a crow. Like he likes all the shiny stuff.
Yeah,
all the shiny stuff. And
yeah.
Look at me. You know.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. But yeah. And he knew where, you know, that's why, you know, that when he was there at the end, he's like, I can't live life without it.
Yeah.
And there's a video that I show people because it is something with your, you know, with your brain, and like, and it's kind of funny, but it's so true, because it's like, it talks about like the addict, if you put, you know, whatever their drug of choice is right there, right? And somebody's pointing a gun at you. If you take it, I'm going to kill you, you know? And he goes, and the addict's brain was thinking, can I take that and put it in my system before the bullet kills me? You know, They're not thinking they're going to die. They're like, I want to have that. I want to have that. Maybe I can feel high for a second before I die, you know? And so that's the brain.
Yeah.
And, you know, and he couldn't.
Yeah.
And, but good things have happened. I think did I tell you, because, you know, one thing was whenever he got to those recovery houses, he didn't want to have to start over because he's got a big ego.
And by start over, you mean like what do you mean? Exactly.
Because start at the beginning, like you're on 30-day restrictions. You have to go to 5 meetings a week.
Oh,
you have to, you know, they don't give you they have you contained. And he already knew all that stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously, and I always tell, obviously not, because you keep
not
on doing
enough.
drugs.
Yeah.
But so he could do all that. In fact, they would always offer him jobs. He did it so well.
Yeah.
So when I went to that organization that I joined, that Night in Vain, I went to a gathering they had, and the guy that was the caterer said, he's, you know, because we take pictures of our loved ones, and he said, your son called me. your son called me and he was gonna, because I run a recovery house. He called me the last week he was alive. He called me and I told him, he would have to start over. And he was giving me the reasons why not, and he goes, and you know what? We couldn't give it to him, but we do it now.
Oh.
So that's cool. He said there's some kind of a screening that they do and see where the guy is at. And then they place him accordingly.
Yeah.
So, he goes, so I'm sad I couldn't do it for him, but we are doing it now. I'm like, well, thank you. That's cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he couldn't get out of his own way. He's got too much ego.
Yeah. Jeez.
That's why he even said from jump, he goes, I'm never gonna have kids. I'm too selfish.
There's gotta be a buddy around there out there
You
somewhere,
think so?
right? Oh, somewhere. He was too out there to not be.
I know. I go, but I'm sure you didn't take care of yourself all the time.
Yeah.
Because he's like, no, Mom, I do. I'm like, okay. I don't know. I know, right? One day somebody's gonna come. It's like, hey, I'm your grandson.
You look just like him.
Yeah. Your dad says I watch too much Lifetime because I always go, maybe one day somebody will come in and say that, Can we put on Facebook, anybody look like this guy? Come and see me. Oh, but then we did find that guy, our new family, right?
Oh, that's funny. I do want to go back real quick because we keep mentioning, and I'm sure there's people like, why aren't you talking about it? We keep mentioning you going to prison.
Nobody asked.
But I want to go through what happened there and why that happened.
Okay.
Yeah. So this was, I think I was in college because I remember using you being gone as an excuse to get out of something.
Oh, okay.
But, yeah.
So I went in front of Judge Ruth Ann Franks. And everybody knows her. Why don't you say her name? People go, like that, But anyway, and at that time, I wasn't ready to say I had a problem.
Yeah.
And I didn't tell Jerry I had a problem.
Yeah.
I didn't tell Jerry that I drank too much. I did say I didn't remember doing what I did because I didn't. I was in a blackout. I bought a diamond bracelet at the mall on camera. And I even bought the guarantee, the warranty.
Really?
Yeah. So, yeah, with a credit card that belonged to somebody else.
Oh, okay.
So that's what it was.
Yeah.
So I'm on camera, and so then I got fired from my job because I'm on camera and they know it's me, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't remember. And I would do that. I would find things in the car, find things in the house. I wouldn't know how they got there.
Yeah.
So, and you know what? For that is so not me. Like, I take change back to the store.
Yeah.
If I forget to scan the water on my cart and I go to my car, I take it back. I remember one Christmas we were shopping at Kohl's and I put a watch on I showed it to Dad. I'm like, I think I'm gonna get this watch. What do you think? And so he goes, yeah. So we get home and it's on my wrist and I didn't pay for it. And I instantly start sweating.
Yeah.
So I wanted to hurry up and go back, and Dad's like, they're closed. So I went back the next day to the service counter and I'm like, showed her the watch. She goes, oh, is something wrong with it? I'm like, no. She goes, oh, you returning it? No, I want to pay for it. She goes, what? I go, I took it home last night and I didn't pay for it. She goes, nobody does that. I'm like, I do, So it was not in my nature to do that.
Yeah.
So I was this other person. So anyway, she asked if I have a drug or alcohol problem. And I said, no. And then she said, well, then you must just be a thief. I'm going to send you to prison. And so, but she did say, I need to make an example out of her. She's a nurse. She's not supposed to be taken from people. But in 30 days, file the papers to get her out because it was an 18-month sentence.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And so that particular year, then I spent thanks. And he even asked, see, I mean, she knows Jerry too, but some things she won't budge. He goes, can she go home and get her affairs in order? And she said, nope.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that year I spent Thanksgiving at Toledo, Christmas at Marysville, and New Year's at Cleveland Pre-Release. So, but I have a lot of names, addresses, stories. I mean, and my friend, a friend of mine, because I tell her it was like a vacation because my life was unmanageable. I was drinking too much, And I thought, and I was on pills to wake up, on pills to go to sleep. The doctor he gave me whatever I wanted. And so I thought, how am I going to survive?
Yeah.
And I did. I didn't have any of that. And I think it's because I can do what you tell me to do, wake up when you tell me to wake up, make my bed right, do whatever, And because I was educated in Marysville, they they give you a test. And the CEO was like, oh, Melchor, you are smart, aren't you? I'm like, I told you,
Yeah.
So I got really good jobs, and I was able to walk everywhere, and I remember, but I was with like women that were doing their time for their man because they were drug dealers and they had to keep going to work, so they had to do their time. This one woman walked in and they're like, hey, all the CEOs knew her. I'm like, I remember asking my bunkie, I'm like, she goes, yeah, she usually sleeps her time away, because my bunkie was, well, the name that I always called, she always called on the phone. But she said, yeah, she comes here all the time and just sleeps her time away. And the CEO's like, you're going to get another number 2. I'm like, I'm not coming back. He goes, okay, we'll see. Part of me wants to go and say, see, I didn't come back, but and they would tell me, because I told them what I did. I go, I gave that bracelet back and I still had to pay for it. And I'm like, yeah. I said, nobody told me that. I would have just kept it.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, that's what they make you do that. He goes, Cindi, you're not supposed to give stuff back. You're not even supposed to tell them you have it. I'm like, well, I don't know. And then they're like, Cindi, you're so nice. Just stop drinking. Quit getting in trouble. And so, there was a woman in there that had embezzled hundreds of thousands of dollars from this doctor she worked for because he was a butt. She said he deserved it. I'm like, well, now you're in prison, So, and I remember I was smoking then, and I had my cigarettes, but I didn't have a lighter. So I walked up to this woman and she's like, I asked for a light and she looked at me like, mean mugging me, but she gave me a light, you know? And I walked over and my friends are like, Cindi, don't talk to her. I'm like, what? And he goes, she's the woman who stabbed her husband 27 times and put her baby in the microwave.
Oh,
I'm
my
like,
gosh.
oh, I go, well, I don't want to know what any of you guys did.
Yeah.
Because I just, if you're nice to me, I don't want to know. I didn't want to know what my bunkie did. She was nice to me. She protected me. I think she did something with children because of how she talks sometimes.
Yeah.
But I didn't ask and I didn't want to know.
Yeah.
And I remember I was working in the kitchen one day and this one girl says, that's a tiny piece of chocolate cake. I'm like, you're in prison. And my bunkie says, I better walk you to our room because she's probably going to beat you up. I go, because I didn't give her another piece of cake. Yeah. I'm like, that's just stupid. She goes, Cindi, you can't just be doing that. Just talk to Ed. I'm like, okay. And I remember this one time because the judge says you cannot get in trouble.
Yeah.
Right? Don't get written up because then you're going to have to do your 18 months. And I remember, I don't know what I was thinking. I got up and I started walking in the hallway. And then Lynette's like, psst, get back in here. And I'm like, I looked up and there was the guard at his desk looking at me. And I'm like, beep, 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 walk backwards. And the next day, so I couldn't sleep. I'm going to get written up. I'm going to have to do 18 months. I'm going to have to tell my husband that I was in the hallway.
Yeah.
So the next morning I walk by him. He goes, good morning, Melchor. And I'm like, morning. He goes, enjoy your breakfast. So I go get breakfast. I come back. I'm like, thank you. And he goes, for what? I go, okay. I walked away, so I'm like, but yeah. But even then, so I'm in prison, right? That should teach me something. But she didn't make me go to meetings. I just had to not get in trouble.
Okay.
And so I was gone for 77 days. And I know this because your dad counted them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I wouldn't know. And so I remember when they said, Melchor, bunk and junk, which means you're done, you know. And so I said, oh, I got to go. And I'm saying goodbye to everybody. Like, nobody does that. What's wrong? Because you're always smiling and you're going to say goodbye to us, And like, honestly, I was like, we're going to miss you. And so I told everybody, because there's a bunch of stories. And I said, one day I'm going to write a book. And I do plan on it one day, And there's this one lady, she goes, here's a number. She goes, if you ever need anything, like need people gone. I'm like, just like on TV? And she goes, yeah.
Oh, my
So I tell your dad sometimes, I got that number. Watch out.
Oh my gosh.
It's in my box of Marysville stuff. But, and so, yeah. Well, I mean, they're gonna. It was, and I was drunk within a month.
Yeah,
because back then they didn't, the probation, they didn't have breathalyzers. They didn't do all kinds of other stuff, So, but it wasn't until I got that DUI when you had that party when you were helping me with, and that was when I stopped because I'm like, I can't. I saw the look on your dad's face, and I'm like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
But like by that time, my hands were shaking in the morning. I had to drink so I could put my makeup on, and so, and if you're a drug addict and you stop doing drugs, you get dope sick, and you feel like you want to die.
Yeah.
It's very painful. That's what I've heard. But you won't die if you stop drinking abruptly, like as much as I was drinking, I could have died.
Oh, really?
I could have had a stroke. So the next morning I wasn't sick. And, I had been praying all night. The next morning I wasn't sick. And that's when I decided, I had to devote my life to helping others because I never got. And I didn't want to drink that morning, and I was very grateful because I wasn't sick, but it did, it was hard.
Sure.
Yeah. But I realized what had happened, and people's like, you didn't get, didn't get sick. So that was a miracle.
Yeah.
That was a God thing telling me that I had to change my life. So.
And you did.
And I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's cool to, obviously, I know a lot of that stuff that we've talked about. But it's cool to see that. It's also cool to know at some point Mateo and Lillian will know all that stuff. And I, when they figure that out, I don't know. It's not like one of those things you're going to sit down and be like, all right, now listen to me. This is what I did.
This is what I did.
Yeah. So, I mean, they don't even know anything about Buddy, right? So, like, as they get older, for them to understand all this stuff and to figure out, all these things that happened, as it happens when you're a kid, right? If you learn about your parents or you learn about your grandparents and whatever they did, so it's exciting to, like, be able to see them, like, go through all this discovery, basically, and figure all this stuff out.
And then what does somebody look like? I remember I gave a lead at a room full of lawyers because a friend of mine had asked me to do it, and after I was done, he goes, I always thought you were hot, but now you're hotter because you went to prison.
Oh my god!
I'm like, okay.
Jeez.
I don't know why that would work, but okay.
Oh my gosh. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast, Mom.
Yeah.
Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. One thing though, before we go, can you? I forgot to grab the box out of that blue bag. Take your headphones off, though. I don't want you to.
Oh, okay.
Because we got to do that.
Whoa.
You're okay. It's fine. We got to do this one question thing. I forgot that I've been doing. And that, right in there. Yep. Okay. The blue box. The blue box. There's one in there too. Yeah.
Okay. I see it.
All right. Okay. So this is the YouTube only segment I've been doing. I don't know if you noticed it or not, but there's these like 5-minute videos where I'm trying to get more traction on the YouTube page.
Okay.
So again, this will be like, we'll read the question now, so people then go to the YouTube page, find this video where you would get your answer.
Okay.
So there's three kinds of questions in here. There's icebreakers, there's deep questions, and there's deeper questions.
Oh my.
So if you get an icebreaker, there's less icebreakers than everything else. But if you get an icebreaker, you gotta do an icebreaker and another one, because icebreakers are like, what's your favorite ice cream?
Okay.
So it's real easy.
All right.
But if you pick one of the other ones, then you just do one.
Okay.
So pick one and then just hand it to me.
You're going to read it because I don't have my glasses on.
Yeah. I'll read it. Okay. So this is the deepest we can go, is deeper.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So I'm going to read the question and then we'll pause for a second. But again, thanks for coming on here, Mom.
Yeah.
I know you like telling your story, and it's fun to learn a lot of stuff. And one thing that I'm really kicking myself for is not doing something like this with Grandma. Like, I always wanted to talk to her and just have stuff, on audio to listen to and to know more about her. So I'm glad we're able to do this because, again, later on, family will want to know all this stuff too.
Yeah.
So, but I appreciate it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, she got sick really quickly.
Yeah.
So.
Well, there was times where I was doing it and then I stopped, and then the program that I did have a couple things on, like, it doesn't exist anymore, and I didn't save it anywhere. So there was like a few like 10-minute conversations that we had on the phone. You know? So
Well, she always sings happy birthday to you, right?
yeah, and that's another thing. Like they were on my voicemails, saved voicemails, and now I can't find them anywhere.
Oh,
like, I have no idea where they're at. So because there was a bunch of those on there.
They're
too.
out there somewhere.
Yeah, we'll have to find them. All right, so here's your question. Have you ever let someone take the blame for something you did, and what was it? So again, look for the answer on the YouTube page under the Cindi Melchor questions video, and she'll have the answer there. Subscribe while you're there. Mom, thanks again for coming on the podcast.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking.
Thanks again to my mom for coming on the podcast. It was cool to be able to sit down here. I know I had to break it up in 2 days, but it was cool to sit here for 2 hours and just listen and talk to her. Like I said at the beginning of part one, you know, something I wanted to do with my grandma before she passed away, and I'm glad I'm able to do this with my mom for my kids, or for any other family that wants to hear this. And now anybody can have access to it because it's on the internet forever. So it's great to be able to share this with other people. So, you know, thanks again for coming on here. Thanks to Fort Meigs CrossFit for helping me with this podcast, helping me grow this podcast. It's been great. I like walking in here right now. I'm sure you can probably hear some of the music in the background because there's a class that's going on. But it's cool as the more I'm here, like people coming up to say hi. You know, I still plan on taking classes. I know I keep saying that. I think this is probably maybe the third week that I've said it. I don't know anymore. But softball's wrapping up here on Sunday, so I'm hoping I can at least get out here on Sunday mornings and take a class and not kill myself. So I'm working towards that. But thanks to them, you know, check out their website, fortmexcrossfit.com, for any information. As always, thanks to Cuttlefish Graphics, Real JP Multimedia, Big Daddy Graphics, and Perrysburg Junior High STEM Lab for always helping out the podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.